Welcome back.
Hello.
This is Bad Marriages in the Bible, and we are your hosts. I'm Sean.
I'm Kate.
And we are the founders and directors of Dandelion Ministries, where we use creative expression to magnify the grace of Jesus Christ in places of pain, where you're actually hurting, where you actually need to hear good news. We want you to hear it. And we love to use art to do that, and music, and just creativity to open up those spaces, to kind of lower our defenses and get around the rational and get to where you're actually living. And because the rational is always functioning according to the law for most of the time, we're always trying to look to justify things or to prove something's right or wrong. And what we really need is somebody to meet us where we're actually just hurting. So art has a wonderful way of doing that. And we use retreats and conferences and podcasts like this and blogs and all sorts of things to do that. So to create that space. So we've been walking through all the relational dynamics in Scripture in Bad Marriages in the Bible. It's just full of regular people like you and me who are broken lovers. And so it is chock full of examples of people who need grace and forgiveness. And that's why we're doing it that way. That's why we're calling it. That's why we call it Bad Marriages in the Bible. It's just to show that we're broken, and it is our primary relationships where we experience our need for grace most often. And we've made our way up to Matthew. We're in the New Testament, and we're in the Sermon on the Mount, and so we're hearing Jesus actually give us the law at its full tilt, or as one of our professors would say, 100 proof law. Like this is it. There's no pulling back here. He is amplifying it, as Spinal Tap would say. He's turned it up to 11 so that we can actually hear it for what it is. And because we always love to turn the law down. We want to negotiate. Like I said, our rational minds always want to compromise. We want to jockey and kind of find where, can we push the line a little bit? Maybe if I just am like really great 80% of the time, wouldn't that be great? Isn't that enough? We try to make the law something that's attainable for us, because our sin, since the day of the fall in the garden, has told us that we need to try to do it on our own and prove ourselves. And Jesus has come to say, no, that is not what you need. You need to be saved, and you're actually dying under that sin, under that deception. So,
yeah, and in this passage that we're going to look at today, he's really leaning in on heterosexual marriages.
Yes.
And he's saying, you too are full of sin. There is not one kind of marriage out there that is without the need for his redemption.
Yeah, this is building off of last time, which it's been a couple weeks since we've been on air with you guys, and that's because we were traveling, and then also this huge snowstorms hit up here in Long Island. So we were just digging out. So now, but we're back. In our last episode, we looked at lust, and we got into the internal realities of our brokenness, of our hearts that are always looking for something else. Grass is always greener. We reflexively can't even help it when we see somebody we find attractive. Something there's just this brokenness in us that is desiring something else, and that Jesus shows that is actually the same as adultery. It's the same as actually the action of having an affair with somebody, and so this builds on that, where we see him talking about divorce next, and the realities of the actual playing out. He was talking about it on a heart level, and now it's moving into the actual playing out of breaking up with each other, divorcing one another. And he's coming after the men mostly. He's kind of highlighting their activity in this short little paragraph.
That's right. In that context, men could divorce their wives for making a burned meal. It could be as trivial as that, or just stop liking her. Now, in our days of equality, both sides of the couples can do that.
Irreconcilable differences.
I stopped liking you, so I want a divorce. So it's definitely coming against casual divorce, but also that sense of, well, at least I had a certificate of divorce, and he was like,
Right.
I see through all of these menial things that, yeah, sure, you have a certificate. Who cares? There's like a broken promise at the root of it that God sees. And the point of his Sermon on the Mount is to do heart surgery on every single person.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it is. This sermon is to just take away any excuse. It is to, as Paul says in Romans 3, to stop every mouth, so that every mouth may be stopped.
I'm so glad you read that. In fact, let's read the whole thing. Romans 3, verse 19 and 20. Now we know that whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law, which is
everybody on earth.
Everybody. And, even Christians, when you become a Christian, Jesus delivers you from the curse of this law. So this cannot separate you from God because he's taken your sin away. But this side of heaven, the law will still impact us. It's not like we stop sinning this side of heaven. It's just that we live now by faith, and so that sin part of you is still there, but it's technically dead. And the spirit part of you by faith is alive. But Christians are the first in line to be like, I still sin.
Right.
And so thus the law is still going to convict you. So let's continue with this passage here in Romans 3. The law says it speaks to those who are under the law so that every mouth may be stopped and the whole world may be held accountable to God. So none of us are going to justify ourselves before God. In that final day, you're not going to be like, well, I was a good person. This sermon is like, well, if anybody thinks that that's how you get into heaven by being a good person, they've never read this sermon, because Jesus is stopping every mouth that's trying to say that I have something to stand on before God. So by the works of the law, no human being will be justified in his sight.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing you do is going to justify you, since through the law comes the knowledge of sin. And so Jesus is like, oh, you don't think you're a murderer, or you don't think you're an adulterer? Well, this is the full standard of God's holy love. Mm-hmm. This is what love really does with, to itself and to other people. And that's not you guys. It just shows that you're not loving.
You're not doing it. Yeah. I mean, this is one of those things where oftentimes people think, oh, if we just had, if I just had the right law, then I'd be good. If I could just do the law, then I'd be saved. And this is, so we often think that Jesus is kind of plan B. The law was plan A. If we're just good on our own, then we'd be fine. Like if Kate was just perfect enough, she'd be able to get into heaven without Jesus. And what Paul is doing, and what the New Testament does, what Jesus is doing in the Sermon on the Mount, is saying, no, ever since the fall, that has not been the scenario. The fall is when Adam and Eve were created. They were created without sin. They actually were the people that had the opportunity, as it were, to. It's still, though, when you think about it, is all by grace, because they were created and given all that by God. None of it was something they earned, but they just had the status and they were free. And then they fell. And since then, there has been no way, and it never was the way. They actually weren't justified by the law in the first place in the garden. They were justified by God's good nature towards them, and they were free in him. And so that's the whole thing. Paul is saying it's not by the law. It's never been by the law. There is no law that can do it, and the law is only given to show you sin. That's the whole point. It's our brokenness. It's literally your sin. It's the deception of Satan. We've said it so many times, but I can't ever hear it enough. It is the deception of Satan and your own sin working against you that's telling you, if I'm just good enough, then I'll be approved of. God will love me. He'll bring me in. It'll be okay. And Jesus is blowing that up. He's just blowing it up. He's saying, no. You guys are broken lovers, and you need to be saved, and you need to be rescued from the fact that you can't ever be good enough. And that's exactly what he's come for. That's why he turns the volume up here. That's why he removes any wiggle room. We all have somebody or some category of sin that we kind of judge ourselves against and use to justify ourselves. We're like, oh yeah, I'm broken. I'm not perfect, but I'm not like blank, whoever it is. And choose your people category, those who are socially unacceptable, who just can't hold it together. But you're actually able to keep a facade up, And Jesus is like, I know all of that. And he's basically calling BS. If you ever played that game BS with the cards, and that's what Jesus is doing. He's like, nobody has any ability to stand. You are not justifying yourself in comparison to other humans. You are standing before the righteousness of God, and that is perfection inside and out. And there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to run.
He's doing this not to be mean, but he wants to give you something far better.
Yeah, he's actually putting that to death so that he can give you the new thing.
That's right. He's killing your own efforts, your own justifying yourself. He's killing that. It goes on to say this in Romans 3, verse 21. But now the righteousness of God has been manifest apart from the law. So there is something that comes to you that's not, oh, this is what I should do. Okay, I'm going to go do it. It's something else.
That's right. It's a different category. It's in a different paradigm.
So this righteousness of God has been manifest apart from the law, although the law and the prophets bear witness to it. So they were pointing ahead to this. The righteousness of God through faith in Jesus Christ for all who believe. For there is no distinction, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God and are justified by his grace as a gift through the redemption that is in Jesus Christ. So
that's one of my favorite parts of the Bible when he says that. I've got a few big ones. Galatians 5:1 is one of the big ones. For freedom, he set you free. It's no conditions on freedom. It's just because he wants you to be free. And then that one where you say the righteousness of God has been revealed apart from the law. It's like the greatest news ever, because every day I wake up thinking something else. Every day I wake up and think that my righteousness hangs on my performance today. I mean, you and I have been talking about it today. This is real life marriage right here. We've been talking about, we got back from a long trip where we were working, doing a marriage conference. And like I said, we had to dig out of the big snowstorm that hit. And so we're playing catch up this week. And we both have piles of emails, and we both have tons of backlog that we've got to work through. And both of us were talking about how we've had, shame voices happening, they're like, oh, we're not keeping up. We're somehow failing, obviously I can't do my job the way that I should, whatever it is. Like, you just gotta pile on. We pile on ourselves. And that is what our shame does. And it's what our sin does. And it's what the enemy uses to condemn. And here, Paul is building off of what Jesus is doing in the Sermon on the Mount, and is saying that no one is justified according to the law. If what Jesus taught is true, then no one stands. It's so that every mouth may be stopped, because no one will be justified. No one will be proven right according to this standard. It will do the exact opposite. It will prove everybody wrong. And then you're screwed on one level. Like, what it does is it leaves you without any options until another word comes from outside. And that's what you just read, that the righteousness has been revealed apart from the law.
That's right. So we're going to apply that word of that gift of God's grace apart from the law to marriages. Yeah. And marriages are very lawful.
Sure.
It's meant. We always talk about it's meant to be a ministry of reconciliation, where God is, using your spouse to love you and bring His forgiveness in places that you would never uncover on your own. But it is plenty full of law too,
You wouldn't need any reconciliation if there wasn't any law.
Yeah.
I mean, if we were just all perfect and loving each other perfectly, there'd be no need for forgiveness and reconciliation.
That's right.
But
so Jesus is leaning in to marriage right here with divorce. And it's something that was popular back then, continues to be popular. Nobody wakes up and grows up and is like, hey, I can't wait to get divorced when I get older. No one wants that.
Right.
Nobody wants that. You want to be in love and to be loved. It's your best thinking that somehow you've now gotten into this marriage and it sucks deeply so much that it's better to go through divorce than to stay in it. And so that's what everybody is coping with. Back then, it was quite casual and absolutely one way. The guy could divorce the woman and she had no rights. So Jesus is defending the woman here while convicting all these men. But it's still a convicting word. And it still does heart surgery on the casual divorce or the not so casual divorce today.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because the reality is it's just easier to do now, for sure. You don't really have to have any reason other than you can just cite irreconcilable differences and nobody needs to know anything more. And that's that. And I would say that what you said is true, that we all get into marriage hopeful. Everybody gets into relationships with hope.
Yeah.
They want love and they want the best
You want happily ever after.
They do. Everybody does. And the reality is that when the going gets tough, the tough doesn't get going most of the time, it's hard.
Yeah.
There's difficulty. As one of our mentors would say, get 2 or more people together and expect conflict. That's what should be in every premarital prep out there, which most people outside of the church don't have premarriage prep. And a lot of people in the church don't either. But that should be the warning label, guess what? You're gonna be in conflict with this person a lot. Mm-hmm. You're gonna love them, and there's gonna be wonderful things, and there's also gonna be a lot of conflict, and you need to be able to work through that. Otherwise, it's not gonna work, And it is what our culture is. It's just so much easier because we put our own personal happiness as the highest good. I want to just feel good and affirmed all the time and never have any problems or challenges or difficulty. That's ultimately what happens a lot. And so when you have friction with this person, we think, well, this isn't what I was signed up for. I wanted this person just to make me feel good about myself all the time and make me feel loved and all of that. It's obviously very simplistic what I'm painting with here, this brush, but there is something in there, instead of a relationship that requires sacrifice and service and giving, very often it has been twisted to be something, whereas when it stops being the fairy tale, then I should go look for something else. And that is sad. That is destructive. It's just, that's the way it is. When relationships end, it hurts.
It does. And the effort of reconciliation is broken down. It may be desired. One person may want to do the work of counseling, of trying to work through forgiveness, but that has to be mutual. You need to have both that are bought into that and will put their egos to the side and want to work through it. Mm-hmm. And that is a real miracle every time it happens. It is a miracle and a gift every time it happens. And so in these words, you will not find any grace. No. Jesus is not being nice right here. He is being loving. He is being a savior who is cracking through everybody's little denial shell. So if you are, in a heterosexual marriage and you're like, well, I've never been divorced. I've stayed faithful to my spouse this whole time. Well, have you ever been angry? That's a little bit before,
Have
that
you
you've
ever
murdered
said
them.
in your heart, like, oh,
Yeah.
he's so stupid when he does that, or he's an idiot, or she, why does she just, she's so annoying.
Yeah, that's a little bit
That's
before.
the anger bit.
Right. Have you ever had your eyes stray maybe to appreciate somebody else's spouse or body, outside of your own spouse, or covet somebody else's body? Well, that's the bit before too. So it's like there's nobody who can be like, well, we have the perfect marriage.
Yeah, we're good, and we're going to stand before God. I may have failed in every other regard, but I'm going to stand before God and say I'm holy in the fact that I was married to one woman and I never committed adultery, physically, and we didn't get divorced. That's what the audience is thinking here.
Yeah.
I mean, that's who Jesus is addressing in large. And then those who are sitting with the specific paragraph when he talks about, I'll just read it real quick since we haven't read it yet. So here he says, it was also said, whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. So that's the person who's justifying himself, who's like, I divorced her, but I got a certificate, it's approved under the law, because that's something that was given through Moses. But I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife, except on the ground of sexual immorality, makes her commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. So he's amping up the adultery talk from the lust bit that Kate just cited again. And he is saying, he's addressing those who are standing there saying, well, the audience that Kate just talked about, I'm good. I'm still married to my wife. I've never committed adultery, technically, all that. We've just seen that blown up because he said, if you just see it if you feel it in your heart, if you just look at somebody and be like, dang, that person looks good. Brad Pitt, he's hot, or whoever, you're guilty of adultery. And then here, the person who's sitting there, but I did this lawfully. I divorced her lawfully. They're saying I'm righteous under the law in my divorce. Jesus is saying, no. He's blowing that up. And he is saying the certificate of divorce was given to you. He says this in another spot in the Gospels. The certificate of divorce was given to you because of your sinfulness. And it's not God's standard. It's not righteous. And there's no room to stand in here. So any of us who look down on somebody who's, this Kate keeps saying, heterosexual marriage, because that's what we, as a Christian church, would say this is righteousness. Being married in a heterosexual relationship is the best. And the problem is that it's still riddled with sin. Mm. It's this, none of us are standing before God saying, well, at least I wasn't gay, or at least I wasn't in some sort of, transgender situation or something like that. I was heterosexual, God. He's like, so? He's like, guess what you did with your heterosexuality?
Yeah.
You sinned as well. You're broken there. And as Kate said, none of this is to be mean. It's Jesus saying, like, this is what perfection is. Mm. And really, this is what sin is. That's the law is highlighting sin. It is broken love, and you need to be saved. You look like you're going to read something to us.
Oh, just a cross reference in Deuteronomy 24, which is the laws concerning divorce. And later, Jesus will talk about that Moses just put that in, that you can have a certificate of divorce because of their hardness of heart, because they were all desperate to divorce people.
They're all Henry VIII.
Their wives, and they was like, well, if you do, then you're making her into an adulteress and yourselves, and it's like, this isn't just like you can wash this away. These are people. This is somebody's heart. This is somebody you made a promise to. Open your eyes. This is like real people's lives. This is not something to be, taken lightly. And so he is our Heavenly Father, and he's our Heavenly Father-in-law. And so he's like looking out for both sides and convicting both sides, regardless of what kind of marriage you're in. They're all needing his forgiveness.
That's right. And we highlight all of it because we don't want the divorcees, because this is a really hard word for people who've been divorced. And on average in our culture, it's half of us. Half of us have been divorced.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot. And
that's Christians are no different.
no
than
different.
that
Yeah, the
statistic.
statistics are the same in the church. And so we want everybody to hear that you don't stand. Those who are still married are still dealing with brokenness, and those who have very visibly, had their marriages blow up, they are dealing with brokenness too. And so the whole point of this is not Jesus being like, "Oh, you're the worst." He's not pointing out you're the
divorced
worst.
people are worse than everybody.
No, yeah, he's saying, "I know you're broken, and I know your love is broken, and this is the truth." That the whole reason why we have the law is to show that the actual best thing, which is real love between us and God and each other, which is how the law is summed up, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, love your neighbor as yourself, is because God built us to be in communion and to be in perfect communion with him and with each other. And so what we're seeing when we read Deuteronomy, what we're seeing here with Jesus elevating this, is showing this is our sin breaks that. It destroys it. It actually hurts, as you just said. These are real people that have now gone through this pain. So what? You have a certificate of divorce. You ruined this person's life. And why it says that you've automatically made her an adulterer is because in that culture, as we've covered before in this podcast, women desperately needed the covering of a man, for provision and for social protection, all that kind of stuff. So she was inevitably going to go need to find somebody else to help her out, because the whole social structure was built in a way that was not to her advantage, And so she's screwed. And then anybody else who ends up with her is screwed because of this. And he says right there, you who have the certificate are also screwed, because you're going to go find another wife. Most people out there who've been married and gotten divorced don't just stay single for the rest of their lives. They still want that love. They still want the relationship that they wish they had in the first one. And so Jesus he's just saying, this is the fact. This is what happens. And according to the law, you're guilty. And he's doing that to point to himself, as we read in Paul, because the righteousness of God has been revealed apart from the law. It's been revealed through faith in Christ, through his goodness for us, not our goodness for him, that he actually has come to save divorcees. He's come to save adulterers. He's come to save murderers. He's come to save sinners. That's it. And this is what this passage, what the Sermon on the Mount is designed to do, is to stop the game, to give you nowhere else to stand outside of him. And we hate it. That's why we always try to twist it around and massage it. But it's what we need. We need to have that word given so that we're put to death there, and there's no more objection.
And that's really the Christian's witness in every area of their life. I'm not a perfect parent. I'm not a perfect mother. I'm a forgiven mother who stands in the grace of God, and by his grace, seeks to love and be quick to forgive and, champion our kids. It's in every area. I'm not the perfect wife. I stand in the grace of God, and I need his forgiveness, and I need his grace to forgive you and to, be mature.
Yeah, me too.
I guess I just want to be a baby. And so, be a grown up. You need his grace in every single area. You're a divorcee. You might be like, wow, that second or that third marriage was really so, redemptive, and maybe you really get along so well. And so you stand under grace.
Yeah,
you are a sinner who's been forgiven, and you can testify to redemption and the fact that you need You need his grace. Your sin has been nailed to his cross. He has taken it away. He is not counting your trespasses against you, and you stand under grace.
That's right.
And you have testimonies of redemption, and you're humble, and that's the fruit of what this sermon hitting your heart does. So that when you read it again and again as a Christian, you can be like, well, Lord, let's whatever heart surgery you need to do today. Is there an area of conviction in this?
Mm.
Or is it just sort of the blanket, thank you that I am not saved by living this fully. I am saved by grace in you. And only you could live this fully. Only you could walk through all of this. And I don't even know what it would be like to not want retaliation. That's the next bit.
That's the next one we'll get into.
It's like, I don't even know what that would be like. But I can't wait for heaven, And sometimes I've had glimpses of, being able to let go of things. And by God's grace, I have been able to, emotionally. Sometimes it comes back. But
Sure.
That is definitely my heart's desire. And the Christian reading this is like, oh God, I can't, but you can. And you got to help me with this.
That's right. And that is the testimony. We know friends that have experienced that, what you just described, where they've gone through a divorce. It was painful. Everything that, it was a mess of a marriage. And then they've gotten married and they've been happy and it's been wonderful. But their testimony is not like, oh, I didn't screw up. It's not that. Their testimony is, look how merciful God is. Look at how he redeemed my brokenness. Look how he
used it for good.
He used it for good, how he brought healing. If you've been divorced and you've experienced any kind of reconciliation with your ex, that is a testimony to God's mercy and redemptive love. And that is what we all stand on. That's the whole point. Is Jesus is, he just said everybody who's in a marriage is an adulterer, and he's saying everybody who's been divorced is an adulterer. So that's it. So that's the verdict. And he's come to save you, as Kate just said, beautifully said. And so we are forgiven in him. And that is not this is not cheap grace. It's not making excuses. It's exactly not doing that. It is actually saying, I am broken and I need grace. And that's what grace is. If you're a Christian out there, it's like, oh, they're being very easy on people who have gone through these things.
It's like no, you haven't. No. Go through it.
This is
go through it. It's awful.
Yeah. And Jesus is he's holding out himself and saying, take advantage of this. Take advantage of my forgiveness. It is for you, broken sinner, who cannot help themselves, to take advantage of and be forgiven.
Yes.
That's the point, guys. There's nothing else out there. There's nobody out there who's like, well, I work harder than other people, and I'm just going to, show Jesus that I really am grateful for his gift by not trying to take advantage of it. That doesn't make any sense at all. He actually is saying, you are done without me, but with me, you actually have new life. And he's giving you that new life. And so that's what this sermon, it doesn't let up. We've got a couple more to do, because we are so good, as I said, we're so good at denial. And when Jesus, I don't know if you know that passage where he talks about dogs returning to their vomit. That's what we do with the law. We return all the time. It is our first language because of our brokenness. Our first language is like, this is the thing that makes sense. I'm going to get up today and I'm going to justify myself and I'm going to do great things for everybody. Or I'm going to get up today and feel like crap because I know I'm failing somewhere. This is the way we live. And we need to hear that word from outside again that Jesus is preaching to us and that Paul picks up and says, no one is justified here.
And you're forgiven.
And you're forgiven because of me. That's how he opens the sermon, just to remind you. We'll keep doing it as we walk through it. And he says, I've not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. I've come to do this. I've come to be the one who keeps this for you. And so that means that you are actually set free from trying to prove yourself today.
That's right.
And that your marriage, whatever status you're in terms of marriage, if you've been divorced or you've not been divorced, if you're in a relationship that's going really well, awesome. Or if you're in a relationship where you're pissed and you're killing your spouse internally, whatever it is, he's saying that my grace is sufficient for you and that there's hope for you today. because of my love, because forgiveness is real in me. And so it actually means there's hope for us in our relationships.
That's right. So as you read this, it's not a rule book for life, because if you try to follow it, it will take over, and you'll realize at the end of all of that you can't. You can't live up to all of it. This is meant to open your heart, to convict you where you need it. And that is a good practice. Ignatian spirituality will call that the daily examine. In 12 steps, they do a kind of an inventory, a daily inventory of your resentments, or, your accountability, different recovery programs. They all have it, just so you stay current. So there's not a huge backlog of.
And so you're literally sober about who you are and what you're capable of and what you've gone through and what you have done or not done.
That's right.
It's sobriety about you. And then it also makes you sober about your need.
Yes, that's right. And then you're free, as you were talking about before, Galatians 5, you're free to take care of yourself in the way that you need to. You know what? That's not good for me if I go to that kind of place, or if I, drink that kind of stuff. It's just not good for me. And the different, what you're capable of, and what you need to take care of yourself. So anyway, that was a slight digress, but this is meant to convict. And that is something that on this side of heaven, we continue to need on a daily basis, because you have a redeeming God who loves you and wants, only disciplines those that he loves. So if you're feeling a little conviction, it's because he loves you and he's scooping you closer into his grace and forgiveness. And if it's just kind of all overwhelming and like, oh my gosh, this is something that Jesus is able to do and I cannot, praise God too. That is the right position. Now you are boasting in Jesus and not in your own choices. You're boasting in God and his grace for you. And that is true for you, no matter where you fall on this Matthew 5:31 divorce passage. His grace is sufficient for you and his power is made perfect in your weakness. So thanks for listening.
Thanks, everybody. We're so glad you're with us. We hope you have a great day. Remember to review us if you can in Apple Podcasts, and tell your friends, families, loved ones, exes, and current spouses or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. Tell them all, and we would love to have more of you listen. So there you go. It's our shameless plug and an invitation. There's an ability to support the show in our show notes. You can check out our website there, and there's also my email in there if you have questions and or prayer needs that you would like us to be praying for. So take advantage of that, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks.